Hi, I'm Mr. Milton, and today we're going to be talking about World War One, specifically its origins. Now, I know some of you at this point are thinking, oh, World War One, isn't that just like a prequel to World War Two? I assure you, World War One is so much more. World War One everything that we've been learning so far really has led us up to this point. We've been talking about nationalism, we've been talking about imperialism, and all of this is very much central to what sets the stage at World War One. World War One also, prior to this time, people really looked at war as something good, something that you wanted, something that would bring you and your nation glory. After World War One, because of the devastation, a lot of it's due to the machine gun or the advances in technology. The tank is also introduced here. But we see so much carnage, so much destruction, that people really start to question war in general. We see a whole movement of people wanting not to do this ever again. We see nations isolate themselves to ensure that that wouldn't happen. It really did change the way that people viewed war. Um, it also influenced arts. World War One, yeah, because of like the somber nature afterwards, we saw kind of like surrealism and cynicism kind of like creep up, and it's all very much part of what happened. So yeah, we're going to spend some time talking about World War One, and you can't believe how excited I am. One of the most interesting discussions, which I do find myself in quite often, is what caused World War One. Now I know at this point, some of you are probably thinking, "Oh, I know what caused World War One." And maybe this isn't you, but it's a little voice inside your head. It was the assassination of Archduke Franz Ferdinand. It was so much more. I assure you, the assassination of an archduke that nobody liked was not the cause of World War One, not by any means. Now, it did set the stage for things to happen. It did set a series of unfortunate events that did culminate in the war, but it did not cause World War One. You'll find that the deck was set much long before that. It's really like the tip of the iceberg. It's something that happened that then caused a bunch of chain of effects. It would be kind of like saying Archduke Franz Ferdinand caused World War One. It's like saying that your printer's responsible for your research paper. And that I should give your research paper grade to the printer. Now, that's ridiculous, right? You see that that's ridiculous because you did all the work. I assure you, it's so much more than the assassination of Archduke Franz Ferdinand. Um, this is actually such a hotly contested issue. Last year, I purchased like 6 books about World War One, and each of them said something totally different on how it started. It was amazing. Um, so yeah, it's definitely something that people do question. There are lots of different perspectives. The Treaty of Versailles, which I'm sure you're familiar with, that assigns the blame for the war to Germany. They said it was German aggression that led to World War One. And I think one of the most interesting parts of history that I read last year, it was the transcript of the discussion that the Big Four, well, actually not just the Big Four, that the major world powers had about that very question and what that means. Oh my goodness, it was amazing. So that's one perspective on how it may have started. Germany, of course, says something totally different. And actually, they got in the ground really early in defending themselves. But in 1915, I believe it was, they wrote what's called the German White Book. And it explained why it wasn't their fault. In war, you never want to be the one that causes it. Ideally, you provoke someone and they cause it. But in this case, Germany says that, no, it wasn't us, it was Britain. It's the British fault because they should not have gotten involved. They did not have a direct treaty with Serbia. Yeah, Britain was kind of teetering a little bit and not tipping their hand whether or not they were going to get involved. But ultimately they did. And I don't really think that that's actually the best argument. Another argument that they do make that actually gets a lot of credence recently is that Russia is to blame because they mobilized first. John Green does a pretty decent job on this, and you'll watch that, yeah, you'll see how his perspective. I don't think that that's the answer. You might, again, this is very much an argument in what you're using for your supporting evidence. In the 1930s in the United States, we really liked this particular theory, and I think this is actually still in your textbook. No one caused World War I. Europe simply slipped into war. It just happened because of their foreign entanglements. And so what we need to do, America, is not to have any of those foreign entanglements. Let's be isolationists. The argument here, which actually was very popular in the United States, is that Europe fell into this war like someone may fall due to a banana peel. It just happens. That's absurd. That is absolutely absurd. This did happen because of a reason. All right, here's my argument. I actually wrote a paper on this after taking a World War I class. And yes, I'm very opinionated here. The death of the Archduke provided the pretext for the start of the World War I, meaning that it wasn't the real reason, but it was used as justification. It was actually Germany's colonial ambitions that prompted the new nation to act aggressively in the hopes to gain colonies through war. And I'm going to spend some time kind of walking you through this. And again, if you disagree with me, I'm kind of okay with that, as long as you're using evidence to support yourself. And here's my thesis statement. Although the assassination of Archduke Franz Ferdinand provided the pretext, German aggression and their quest for colonial expansion was the main cause for starting World War I. So this all dates back to Germany. When Otto von Bismarck was in charge of the country, and he's the prime minister, he was not focused on grabbing colonies like the rest of the European powers. He was more focused on industrializing Germany. He felt that that was the way to, bring wealth. He was replaced in the 1890s. Kaiser Wilhelm II, who's the son of Kaiser Wilhelm, he really wanted colonies. So he fired Otto von Bismarck, and then he started to act a bit aggressively. This is actually one of my favorite charts, and we're going to talk about this in class, but I just want to kind of highlight a few things. This is the military expenditure in Europe starting in 1904 down to 1914. Do me a favor, just pause me right now and look at these numbers and look what jumps out. Just pause. Okay, I know that there's so much more that you might want to talk about. Maybe this over here interests you. Maybe this over here interests you. But let's look at this right here. Between 1911 and 1913, Germany doubled their military expenditures. Oh my goodness. That's a lot. And you'll find that because of that, other nations did the same. Russia started to build up their military expenditures over 1912. France did minorly, and actually that seems to be kind of on point to what they're doing. Their big jump was between 1913. Austria-Hungary does have a minor jump. But yes, this is pretty aggressive right here. And this does start a bit of an arms race. And so we do see the military build up in the rest of Europe because of what Germany did. It should also be noted that on November 28th, Kaiser Wilhelm says that if Austria is forced for whatever reason, Germany would make sure that they stood by its side. To make sure that Austria-Hungary, if forced, that Austria-Hungary would not, be fighting alone. They would always be there. But the interesting thing here to note is that Kaiser Wilhelm wasn't saying that only if you're attacked. It was if your position is attacked. And that doesn't mean that if someone goes to war with you, that means if you need to hold on to your power, we have your back. This is what's called a blank check. We don't care if you're fighting a war of blame. We don't care if you're the one who started it. We have you. And you find out that most alliances do not have that. So that's pretty interesting right there. And that happens in 1912. This is also pretty interesting. And one of the reasons that there's so many different arguments about this, well, and why arguments change over time, is that sometimes information comes out later. You'll find that a lot of the German higher ups, their information was gone. It was burnt, or it was just somehow disappeared. And other stuff has come out later. And so that's kind of why some of this stuff changes, why history does change, because you uncover new information. This War Council is one of those bits of new information that was pieced together through a series of diaries, which is fascinating. Wilhelm and the War Council in 1912, they're discussing a potential war. They say war in Europe is inevitable. Currently, Germany and Austria have more troops than France and Russia, but that would not always be the case. France and Russia were building up their armies. So at this point, Germany and Austria have the advantage. War needed to happen soon because that would be favorable for Germany. If they waited too long for war, they might lose. Okay, that's pretty aggressive. He's saying that we want a war. You find, I found this book in the library, not at our library, at another library. It's called Germany in the Next War. It was written in 1912 saying that, yeah, we need to have a war. Okay, so Germany after this meeting, again, the meeting hasn't really, it was uncovered in the 60s, and yeah. So there's a German Army Law of 1913 that calls for an increase of forces and expenditures. And of course, this sets up that arms race. So there's a lot more, well, the military's being built up constantly. On May 12th, 1914, the chief German military officer to the chief of the Austrian military says this. And by the way, this is before Franz Ferdinand was shot. If we do delay any longer, the chances of success will be diminished. What? That's crazy. Right there, he's saying that, yes, we need a war soon. And it goes back to, again, what Kaiser Wilhelm said, that we would be better off now if we fought now than we fought later. Their chances of success are being diminished. The further they wait, they need a war. And June 28th, the assassination of Archduke Franz Ferdinand provides that. Again, you're going to be looking at a couple of different perspectives, and we'll be looking at more with the death of Archduke Franz Ferdinand. It's interesting. And I'm okay if you disagree with me, but I feel like I made a pretty good case right there. Now, I know that there's the other, this is just more of a basic way to look at how World War I began. And a lot of people do this. They use the acronym MAIN to look at the various forces that are in play. It's militarism, and we kind of saw that with the military buildup. The alliance system, which we'll talk more about in a minute. Imperialism, again, this is where Germany, they are making very provocative plays. They're like sending ships to like pretty much attack or to take territory off of other European powers. And then, of course, nationalism. I really like this chart. This kind of is, well, look at this chart. Again, pause me. What story does this chart tell and relate it to imperialism, nationalism, and the alliance system? If you need to look back at your notes, feel free. And again, pause me. I'm okay being paused. Nicely done. We're going to spend the rest of our time talking about the alliance system. The alliance system is very complicated, and we're going to look at how it all started. We have, with this, in the center, these are called the Triple Alliance. The ones in red, these are called the Triple Entente. Entente is French. It's a French word, so that's how you know France is in it. And we're going to look at how that actually started, how that came to be, because that's not how it originally was. Let's move forward. These are the main folks at play, I guess. So right here we have, this is Clemenceau. He's the president of France at times. He's definitely going to be in play later on, but we're just going to use this picture. This is Tsar Nicholas II of Russia. This is George V of, well, the UK. This is Kaiser Wilhelm II, what a mustache, of Germany. Franz Joseph of Austria-Hungary, the dual empire. And Victor Emmanuel II, or it might be the third, and I apologize to him. You seem like a very nice guy. You're very short, and it's fun to see you in your uniform with really tall people. But we're not going to talk too much about you until a little bit. Another thing to note here, right here, boom, boom, and boom, they're all related. So that's kind of fun. We'll talk more about them later because it's, there's some cute little stories. So we're going to talk about the alliance system. So in 1871, Germany won the Franco-Prussian War. Remember this? This is when afterwards Germany became Germany, and he was crowned, Kaiser Wilhelm was crowned in Versailles. They became an empire at Versailles. Oh, that's going to be fun later. They wanted to isolate France because they feared that they would lose land. They felt that France at one point were going to attack them and they might lose some land. So they wanted to create an alliance, and they do with Austria-Hungary, and it's called the Dual Alliance. Boom. You unlocked the Dual Alliance. In 1881, Germany signed a treaty with Russia. So at this point, we have the Dual Alliance, and Germany and Russia, and again, they're related, they are also allies. In 1882, Italy joined the alliance with Germany and Austria, becoming the Triple Alliance. In 1890, Kaiser Wilhelm II, again, he's the new Kaiser, he decides that he's not going to remain in an alliance with Russia. He's just not going to do it. So Russia's kind of off on their own now. Russia did not like this, so they joined an alliance with France. So on one side of Germany, we have Russia. On the other side of Germany, we have France, who are allied with each other. That's important, and that's going to relate to one of their military tactics called the Schlieffen Plan, which we'll talk about later. Between 1898 and 1912, Germany started to be very provocative and started to build up their navy to rival Britain, who's the king of the sea. Again, they're after colonies, and they're going to start provoking little wars here and there, or at least provoking situations that they're going to be awarded colonies. So yeah, they're building up their navy. Britain does not like this one bit, so they join the alliance with Russia and France, but it doesn't actually force them to fight. They don't need to fight. And this is, the point that Germany was making earlier, that they didn't have to get involved, they just did. This new group is called the Triple Entente. So again, Germany is surrounded by its enemies. The UK has the boats. The Triple Alliance is right here. We also have Serbia. Serbia is allied with Russia, but it's actually a part of Austria-Hungary. Austria-Hungary is an empire that's actually took over a lot of these areas in the Baltic states. The Baltic states notoriously have gone back and forth between people. It's actually called what's called a shatter zone, being that there's so many different types of people. It's kind of like a gateway. There's no borders, there's no natural borders, and so it seems to be a place that a lot of different people live, and no one's really been able to control it. There's a lot of influence there. Again, this is where Archduke Franz Ferdinand is killed. And again, I'm going to this area in a couple weeks. So we're going to stop right there. Because what I'd like you to do is watch a few videos on other explanations as to what started. But I think at this point you kind of have a feel for the people involved.